Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're unearthing a truly remarkable story, one that completely rewrites our assumptions about power in ancient Egypt. Imagine a time when kingship was strictly for men, passed down, through the male line as a divine right. Yet one extraordinary woman stepped into that role, really redefining what a pharaoh could be. We're talking about Hatshepsut, and her reign is just full of surprises.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we've really sifted through the articles, the research, looking for those critical nuggets of knowledge. Our mission basically is to unpack exactly how Hatshepsut achieved this unprecedented power, what her reign was truly like, and perhaps most surprisingly, why her incredible legacy faced a deliberate, systematic attempt at erasure. You're going to hear some truly fascinating facts and insights about this remarkable figure because her story, well, it challenges so many assumptions we hold about ancient history.
Okay, let's unpack this incredible ascent to power then. Hatshepsut. She was born sometime between, 1505 and 1495 BC, eldest daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I and his great royal wife, Ahmose. So she was part of the formidable 18th dynasty, a lineage renowned for its powerful warrior kings.
A very powerful family.
And when she was about 14 or 15, she married her half-brother, Thutmose II. Similar age. Talk about ingrained royal blood.
Indeed. But here's where it gets really interesting for her path to power. When Thutmose II died, the throne passed to his son, Thutmose III, who was only, 2 years old at the time?
Just a toddler, yeah.
Exactly. So the traditional path dictated that Hatshepsut would serve as regent, ruling on behalf of the child king. Early modern scholars, for a long time actually, they believed this was the entire extent of her role, just regent. However, modern scholarship now overwhelmingly agrees that by year 7 of Thutmose III's reign, around 1472 BC, Hatshepsut had fully assumed the position of pharaoh. She became co-ruler. She even backdated her accession as pharaoh to year 1, when she had initially been, merely regent.
The audacity of that move is just staggering, isn't it? Especially for the time. She wasn't just a powerful queen. She effectively declared herself pharaoh, ruling in her own right. And while she was only the second confirmed woman to rule Egypt, Sobekneferu was much earlier.
Much earlier, yes.
Hatshepsut was the first to do it in a period of great prosperity. Arguably, she wielded more power than any female predecessor. So in a society so rigidly patriarchal, how on earth did she actually convince people to accept this? What was her strategy?
Well, it was really a masterclass in calculated strategy and political theater. To legitimize her rule within that Egyptian patriarchy, Hatshepsut didn't just step into the role. She completely embraced and embodied traditionally male concepts of kingship. She was often depicted as a male pharaoh, emphasizing both male and female qualities to kind of convey this idea that she was both a mother and a father to the realm. This wasn't about her personal gender identity, you understand, but about adopting the very symbols of power.
And she took this transformation visually to a whole new level, didn't she? In official representations, she assumed all the regalia of the pharaonic office. We're talking the Khat head coif, that distinctive striped headdress, the cobra-adorned uraeus, the protective serpent symbol worn on the brow, the shendit kilt, that short-pleated skirt, and crucially, the traditional false beard, even ram's horns sometimes.
Exactly. The false beard is key.
It's fascinating how she used these powerful, undeniable symbols of male kingship. It was designed, like you said, to show her as a traditional pharaoh, not to imply cross-dressing or androgyny, but just embodying the office itself.
Precisely. And to solidify her claim, she backed it up with truly powerful propaganda. It was brilliant, really. Yeah. First, the priest promulgated a story of divine birth. The myth stated that Amun, the chief deity, took the form of Thutmose I to conceive Hatshepsut with Ahmose.
Wow.
And reliefs depicting every step of this divine conception are famously carved at Karnak in her own mortuary temple. You can still see them. Second, the oracle of Amun publicly proclaimed that it was Amun's will for her to be pharaoh, stating, and I quote, "Welcome, my sweet daughter. Thou art the pharaoh, taking possession of the two lands."
That's quite a statement.
Right. And these proclamations were even carved on her monuments for everyone to see. And finally, she further asserted her claim by inscribing on her mortuary temple that her actual father, Thutmose I, had designated her as his successor. This wasn't just ancient PR. It shows how deeply embedded religion and myth were in legitimizing power. Hatshepsut understood that to rewrite the rules of succession, she first had to, rewrite divine will itself, a truly audacious and politically masterful stroke.
That's an incredible multi-pronged approach, playing to both the divine and the dynastic. And it seems her claim did stick, didn't it? Because ancient authors like Manetho and Josephus, they retrospectively described her reign as lasting about 21 to 22 years. which actually lines up pretty well with modern
It
attestations.
does, yeah. The timelines match up quite nicely.
So after all this effort to legitimize her rule, how did this unprecedented female pharaoh's reign actually unfold for Egypt? What was it like under her rule?
Well, Hatshepsut's reign really stands out as a period of immense prosperity and general peace. Unlike many of her warrior pharaoh predecessors, she focused heavily on stability and economic might rather than, constant military campaigns.
She certainly did. She famously reestablished many crucial trade networks, ones that had been disrupted during the Hyksos occupation of Egypt, which must have brought absolutely immense wealth back into the country. An economic boom, really.
Oh, definitely. And her most famous commercial endeavor by far was the grand mission to the legendary land of Punt. This expedition returned with an incredible bounty, including 31 live myrrh trees.
Live trees.
Live trees, yes. And other exotic luxuries like frankincense. And here's a truly fascinating detail. Get this. Hatshepsut herself would grind the charred frankincense into coal eyeliner.
No way.
Yes, making it the first recorded use of the resin for that purpose. This remarkable expedition was famously commemorated in intricate reliefs at Deir el-Bahari, known for their surprisingly realistic depiction of Queen Atati of Punt.
Wait, coal eyeliner from frankincense? That's an incredible detail. It really humanizes her, doesn't it? Showing her as a pharaoh who literally used the exotic wealth of her expeditions in her daily life. But beyond trade, she was also a monumental builder, wasn't she? I've read she was one of the most prolific builders in ancient Egypt, commissioning hundreds of construction projects.
Absolutely. Her architectural legacy is immense. She left her mark on iconic sites like the vast Karnak temple complex. There, she restored ancient areas like the precinct of Mut and erected these towering twin obelisks at the entrance.
The tallest in the world at the time, right?
Exactly. The tallest. One still stands today. It's the second tallest ancient obelisk still standing. She also built the Red Chapel there. And the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, which unfortunately broke during quarrying, it still provides valuable evidence of how they actually cut these massive stones.
Incredible engineering.
It really is. And across Egypt, from those quarries in Aswan to the cavernous temple of Peket at Beni Hassan, the Greeks called it Speos Artemidos, she commissioned hundreds of projects. Each one was a statement of her unwavering authority and was strategically used to bolster her religious base and further solidify her legitimacy.
It's just mind-boggling to imagine the sheer scale of these projects, in a world without modern machinery. And I think we both agree that her masterpiece, the absolute crown jewel of her building projects, has to be her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari.
Without a doubt. It's considered a marvel of ancient architecture. Truly breathtaking. Its multi-tiered colonnaded design is just seamlessly integrated into the towering cliffs opposite Luxor. And what's particularly striking is how the temple's walls are adorned with these intricate reliefs depicting her divine birth and that incredible Punt expedition, consistently portraying her as a male pharaoh to reinforce her legitimacy. It truly was, as you say, an autobiography in stone, designed to ensure her eternal reign.
And yet, despite all this careful planning, all this monumental building, her story takes such a shocking turn. Her reign ceased in year 22 of Thutmose III's reign, around 1458 BC, after ruling as pharaoh for about, 21 years and 9 months?
Yes, that's about right. And for her burial, Hatshepsut initially extended her father Thutmose III's tomb, KV 20, for a double interment. However, later, Thutmose relocated to a new tomb, KV 38, and it's thought that Hatshepsut's mummy was also moved, perhaps to the tomb of her nurse, Sitter-in KV 60.
Why move her?
Well, one theory is this relocation might have been carried out by Amenhotep II, who was Thutmose III's son, perhaps to secure his own, maybe slightly uncertain, claim to the throne. He later usurped many of her accomplishments too, so it fits a pattern.
Ah, okay. And speaking of mummies, there was that intriguing discovery back in 2007, right? An unidentified mummy labeled KV60A found in that same tomb, KV60. It was proposed to be Hatshepsut herself.
That's correct.
The crucial piece of evidence was a missing tooth from the mummy that seemed to perfectly match a molar found in a canopic box, one of those jars for organs, bearing Hatshepsut's name.
That was the connection, yes. Based on that, researchers proposed a cause of death, bone cancer. Possibly, and this is speculative, possibly from a carcinogenic skin lotion found in her possession. Maybe she inadvertently poisoned herself trying to soothe irritated skin. She also likely suffered from arthritis and, had pretty bad teeth generally.
But wasn't there a problem with that identification later?
There was, yes. In 2011, a new finding cast some doubt. It turned out the tooth from the box was from a lower jaw, while the mummy, KV-60A, was missing an upper molar. So the mystery of her exact mummy, well, it continues.
It's chilling, though, to think about how close her entire story came to being lost. Regardless of the mummy's identity, the most shocking part of her legacy is the systematic erasure that occurred later. Towards the end of Thutmose III's reign and continuing into his son Amenhotep II's, there was this deliberate attempt to just remove Hatshepsut from the historical record.
A very thorough attempt.
Her cartouches, her images, chiseled right off stone walls, replaced, smoothed over, or just covered up completely. Many of her statues were torn down, smashed into pieces, and buried, especially at el-Bahari. It's a stark reminder of how fragile historical truth can be.
And the reasons why this happened are still debated among scholars. One theory is, well, maybe Thutmose III harbored some resentment, or maybe there was a later need to reinforce male pharaonic succession since her reign obviously went against the established norms.
Makes sense.
Another idea suggests it was more typical pharaonic self-promotion, putting his name over hers, or maybe even a cost-saving measure, just reusing her grand structures. However, some scholars, like Donald Redford, argue it wasn't necessarily born out of hatred. It might have been more of a political necessity for Thutmose III to assert his own beliefs and legacy. He points out that some of her cartouches and figures in hidden, less public places were actually left intact.
Oh, that's interesting. So not a total obliteration.
Not totally complete, no. And more recent research even suggests some of it might have been a kind of routine ritual deactivation of statuary, rather than purely a destructive act of iconoclasm aimed at her personally. The jury's still somewhat out on the exact motive.
That's fascinating that it might have been more about asserting a new order or some kind of ritual rather than just outright vengeance. Whatever the specific motivation, the impact was profound, wasn't it? Egyptologist James Henry Breasted called her the first great woman in history of whom we are informed. Her rule clearly went against the patriarchal system of her time, and yet she absolutely thrived.
Indeed. And her erasure caused what became known as the Hatshepsut problem for early modern Egyptologists. It really threw them. When her name was erased, they started encountering texts describing these clearly masculine figures, pharaohs with beards and kilts, but using feminine grammatical forms in the hieroglyphs.
That must have been confusing.
Immensely confusing. Jean-François Champollion, the famous decoder of hieroglyphs, he even wrote about how astonished he was, finding inscriptions referring to this bearded king in the usual dress of the pharaohs, but consistently using feminine nouns and verbs. It didn't make sense initially.
So this Hatshepsut problem wasn't just some academic puzzle. It was a fundamental misreading of history itself, all because her memory was so aggressively suppressed. Now that we've rediscovered her story, how do modern scholars tend to assess her unique position?
Well, she successfully ruled as regent for a son who wasn't even her own, which was pretty atypical in itself. She then created this female kingship that the public, by and large, seemed to accept, partly because of her extensive and very visible temple building. However, and this is crucial, she only really achieved this stability and acceptance through the consistent use of male symbols of kingship, the beard, the titles, the depictions.
Right. She had to play by the established rules, visually at least.
Exactly. And some scholars, like Korakuni, even suggest a more complex dynamic. Maybe she was effectively given power, or at least supported, by the elite class who nominally served her, because they ultimately furthered their own interests and gained significant wealth under her stable rule. It forces us to question who really benefits when power shifts like that.
That's a great point. It's rarely just about one person's ambition. And the erasure then connects to even broader themes of gender and power, doesn't it? It feels like more than just a personal slight against her.
Absolutely. Historians like Joyce Towsley, Peter Dorman, Gay Robbins, they suggest the defacement was intended to sort of retrospectively place Hatshepsut in a lower co-regent position. This would allow Thutmose III to claim direct succession from his father, Thutmose II, effectively writing her independent rule out. More broadly, though, it was likely an attempt to extinguish the memory of successful female kingship itself, especially since she succeeded so spectacularly where others, like Sobekneferu perhaps, had not. It was about re-legitimizing male rule for the future, controlling the narrative for generations to come.
It's incredible to think about that long game. What does Hatshepsut's story, this reign that was both so powerful and yet nearly erased, what does it tell us about that fundamental conflict between power and traditional gender roles in ancient societies? And how do those dynamics that struggle for control over the historical narrative, how do they continue to resonate with us even today? The story of Hatshepsut is just a truly remarkable testament to ambition, resilience, and a really daring challenge to ancient norms. She was a queen who became a king, a ruler whose peaceful prosperity and absolutely incredible architectural achievements defined an age, and whose story was almost completely lost to history.
Her rediscovery really challenges us, doesn't it? It forces us to question what narratives are preserved and, crucially, why. It reminds us that there are likely so many other vital stories still hidden in the annals of history, just waiting patiently to be uncovered. So it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What hidden stories are you curious